You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
What is up, Tone Mobbers? We don't really have like an official title. We should probably work on that. But all that aside, we've got a serious episode for you today. This is nuts. Buzz Osborne from the Melvins? That's who we're talking to today. That is absolutely bonkers. If you had told me that this was going to be something that would actually happen, I would have called you crazy. But here we are on this podcast, like 6-7 years later, whatever it is. And I'm talking to Buzz. We had a really, really interesting chat. We had a really good time. And I hope you enjoy it. Who am I kidding? You're going to enjoy this one. This was a fantastic chat. But it bears mentioning, and I don't want to sully this with too much preamble nonsense. If you're waiting on a message from me, I just got back from Nashville. I was down there doing some work stuff with the Stringjoy folks, with my wonderful people at Big Ear Pedals, Karen and Grant. And I just had a bunch going on. I still have a bunch going on. I don't know when I ever will not have a bunch going on. And that is awesome. But all that to say, if you're waiting on a message from me or an email or whatever, I will get back to you as soon as possible. I'm absolutely buried trying to keep my head on straight. And really, that's all I should say at this point in the episode. I apologize to anyone who's waiting on a message from me. I'm really doing my best to get back to everyone, but it is quite the avalanche when I go rogue for a little while and I don't pay 110% attention to what's going on the interwebs. So all that to say, I'm sorry, but I hope you will accept this wonderful episode as a token of my sincere apologies. And hey, let's get into it. Stop talking. Let's talk to Buzz. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have none other than Buzz Osborne. What is going on, man?
Hey, how are you?
Dude, I'm super stoked about this.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for being here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Good.
I think, we can probably not do what I usually do with guests who have been on for the first time and go over like their whole backstory, because I feel like that is probably well established with my listeners at this point.
I would take most of the show.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just see what happens when I start from this point.
Sounds good.
Your distortion pedal that you did with Hilbish is one of my favorite things, and I used it all over my last record. So
that's great.
It's so cool. Can you tell me how you got hooked up with Nathan and how that all started?
Nathan Hilbish is a great guy, and he in 2016 got a hold of the guy who records all of our records pretty much, Toshi Gasai.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent him a preamp that he'd made, thinking that if he sent it to Tosh, I would probably try it,
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically a takeoff on the Sunn Beta Lead preamps that I've always used that are from like the late 70s.
Yep.
And so I tried it and it was great. And I was like, oh my God, I'm finally found something that I can switch over to from these Sunns, because the Sunn, as great as that stuff is, it's literally, you're talking about solders from 1979.
Yep.
And I would have loved to switch to something new that sounded, the way I wanted it to, which is it's a solid state preamp that you run into a power amp.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried it and I said, I got a tour coming up. We're going to do a US tour with Napalm Death. And I go, he goes, well, take it on the tour and test it out for me and see how it does. And so I brought it along with one of my sons and used it every single show for the whole tour. And I told him, I'm in. I want to buy more of them. And so he gave me that one for trying it out for him, road testing the whole thing. And that was a good test because, I can't remember how many shows it was, 40 some shows or something like that. And it worked perfectly. And so I bought 2 more from him. And we just went from there. Then we started talking about, let's do some boxes. How would you like to do distortion boxes? So I told him what I wanted to do distortion box, which was something I discussed with the guys that I play with, Steven and Kevin Rotmanis, who I used to play with. And they're like, what distortion boxes? They play bass. They go, what distortion boxes lack is this mid sweep.
Mm-hmm.
They never have a mid sweep, and certainly don't on bass distortions. And so I was like, we got to have a mid sweep in this thing. And so, high, low, and mid. And then talked about what boxes I liked, what I wanted out of it. And because first and foremost, what I had to tell him was, if the amp doesn't do it, distortion box is not going to do it. It's not going to save your sound. You got to have an amp that sounds good by itself before you can add the distortion to it, or a box like that will just sweeten the deal. But if your amp itself isn't correct, I think it's a really super bad idea to try to fix it with a box, because now you're depending on the entire sound that you have in one stomp box. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So the amp already sounded good without anything, and you add in the distortion box, it works really good. I really like that. I like the other thing I like is the mix control, which means you can mix in or out as much of the signal as you want.
Yep.
Which most distortion boxes don't have it. It's either on or it's off. And if it's on, you can set the level of distortion. That's about it. But this one, you can actually set how much amp is in it versus distortion.
Yeah, I love that about it, because some clean blends I've had them on other boxes before, and it's hard to describe, especially because I'm not an electrical engineer by any stretch. But sometimes they sound like the signals are sitting on top of each other rather than actually being blended together. I'm sure that's not a technically accurate description, but yours has a nice blend to it. It actually sounds mixed together as you dial it up and down, instead of it being kind of stacked, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, Nathan is an electrical engineer. Mm-hmm. He is. That's what he does for a living, but he's a super big music fan as well. So, fortunately, he was a fan of us and liked what I was doing, and he's easy to deal with. I'm very much into the idea that I'm working with a guy. When I call, I'm talking to the guy,
right? And
which is the same with the guitars I use, the electrical guitar company. Mm-hmm. Kevin Burkett, same thing. I'm talking to Kevin. I really like that. I like that kind of closeness you can have with somebody like that. You don't get from a big company.
Yes, totally.
You just don't. Especially, I might get that if I was like had sold, 10 million records, it was Slash or something like that. I might get superstar treatment. I'm not really looking for superstar treatment, but I want something where somebody's actually listening to me, and we can talk about it. Just don't want someone telling me they're going to do a bunch of stuff and then just blowing me off when they realize that we don't have gold albums.
Right. That, or it's, it ends up getting watered down or designed by committee, and then it's like, wait, this is not the thing that I said that I wanted. It's kind of like a record in that way.
I've never had that experience with records, but I know what you mean. Mm-hmm. I've pretty much made the records 100% made the records that I wanted to make.
Yeah.
The time I made them. I haven't had any experience with being, pushed into the corner by someone of any stripe. Mm-hmm. Whether it was Atlantic Records or Ipecac or any of those people, they just took the records as we made them.
That's fantastic. Yeah, a lot of people don't get that kind of experience. Sometimes they get bullied into making something one way or another. And I'm sure some good records have been made that way, but largely I think most people's favorite records are designed by the artist and the team that they have assembled, and that's some of the favorite gear too, is that way. Most of the things I have that I really love are made by smaller companies, just like you're talking about.
Sometimes that works. The smaller it's the same with like indie versus major. There's not like every indie's great.
Right.
No one has ripped me off more than indie labels ever.
I believe that. I
If you don't want to get paid, just make sure you do your record on an indie.
Mm-hmm.
You'll absolutely get nothing, for sure. Almost for sure. I mean, finding record companies that are indies that will actually pay you anything is as rare as a dodo bird. And that's how indie record labels survive now, is by not paying you anything. But it's not like they ever did really pay you. But now it's worse than ever. You're just not going to get anything. And you'll record the record yourself. You'll pay for everything. You'll give it to them, and you'll get nothing.
Right.
Zero.
So
or the label will go to a big distributor. They'll get some huge advance. Then the label just keeps that money, and then the bands will never collect any royalties because the distributor will never pay them any royalties because they already paid the label a bunch of money.
Right.
So it's just it's a mess.
This is a topic that comes up a lot on this show, because this is not the same as trying to make a record, but in the way that I have been able to get people to listen to it, in the way that people listen to music these days, it's kind of similar in some ways. And I, didn't have anybody supporting me other than the guests and the listeners. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Is like, what point does a label really serve in this day and age? Is that you've had all of the experiences. What do you think about that?
Well, it depends on what you want, as far as like the label sometimes can manage it with the distributor to some degree to make sure you get paid. A lot of times with the distributor, what they'll do is they will cross collateralize everything that's on the label.
Mm-hmm.
So if the label puts out 3 records, then they'll go, well, you had money from the first one, but then you took money for the second one. So we have to get that money back. And then there's money for the third one. So we have to get that. And they can do things like that. And if the label's not careful, then you're never going to get paid. They're just never going to get any money for it. And so they can facilitate that sort of thing. What I like about it is you can have somebody that's pushing your stuff in a wide variety of different directions that you don't, maybe as an artist, don't have time for,
Right.
But, the genie's out of the bottle with this thing. Music is basically free, and it's difficult to figure out a way to make any money doing it. And people think that as a result of that, music is actually worthless, which maybe it is. But, there's only so long I can make records that make me absolutely no money before I don't make any more records.
Right. Exactly.
It's just no point in doing it. I can't just do it to lose money. I mean, yeah, you can make crappy recordings at home and make records or put them on the internet. Sure, you can do that. But it's like our mastering guy said, he's like a guy we master all of our stuff with, John Golden. He said he has never, in the last 10 years, he's never mastered worse music ever in his career. Because it's the worst sounding crap that he has ever heard, because people have completely forgotten why they did it with professionals in the first place. I can just do this at home. Well, sure you can, and you can send in an out of phase record and that has all low end because you mix it on computer speakers and wonder why it all sounds like crap. Good luck finding records that sound any good. That's the problem. So really, if you make something that sounds good, it's going to stand up above a lot of crap, but that's kind of always been the case. But so there's give and take in all those departments. Just because you have a recording setup, it doesn't mean you're going to make good records. Just because you have the ability to get it out to millions of people doesn't mean that it's going to be good. You can't throw technology at something and make it good. You just can't. It has to come from writing songs and things along those lines, which I think is important. But the labels, if you want to do something, it's kind of nice to have a small partnership with someone who's they're working on that side while you're doing the other side. Mm-hmm. I don't have time to do everything. Most people that do end up not lasting for that long anyway.
Yeah, burnout's real. It's something that I think everybody deals with. It's happened to me before, and it's not fun. So if you can avoid that by taking some of the load off your shoulders, I could see where that is beneficial.
Yeah, but just getting the distance between an indie band and a check is the longest distance in the world. It just almost never happens. So you just got to be careful. I work with really good people. I work with the guys at Ipecac. They're great. I work with Tom Hazemeyer. He's great. Beyond that, I haven't had a real good experience with most labels.
That's interesting. Have you ever considered just doing it all on your own?
Good, but I mean, I'd have to have a lot more free time. That's fine. I mean, I'm sure I could do that. And I'm sure in the future, that's exactly where it's going to end up. Fine with me. I mean, I'm in this for the long haul. I've watched things since before there were CDs.
Right.
And I personally like CDs. They're really cheap and they sound really good. I think people are going to realize that at some point because records are expensive to make. And by and large, they just sound like crap. I just don't, you try ABing them. I'm sorry. People are hearing stuff that isn't there, but I don't care really how people listen to music. I mean, if you want to listen to crappy sounding MP3s or streaming, fine. What do I care? It doesn't bother me. It's the same as the people listening to 90-minute cassettes of stuff they recorded at home out of convenience. I get it. And I'm fine with that. And I'm not a Luddite. I'm not sitting there thinking, well, it was so much better in the past. No, really, I'm not a good old days kind of guy. I'm a move forward type of guy. I'm not a legacy guy. Vinyl to me seems like it's fine. We'll make it as long as people want it. But as soon as people don't want it, why would I make it? I'm not, born into that technology and live and die on the vinyl end. But I think it sounds like crap. But people think it sounds fine. Fine with me. I'm not going to tell them they're wrong.
Yeah, I like it from just the perspective of if I'm going to buy something physical, I want to buy the most physical thing. It's just fun for me to have as a fan,
I get that.
But it's one of those things where it's like, does it sound better? Probably not technically, especially on my system, which is, not some sort of crazy hi-fi setup by any stretch. But I do like the intention it brings to listening versus it being a more passive experience. You really have to go do it. It's not just kind of playing in the background. You have to physically go do it. And for my generation that went from CDs to streaming, vinyl, I think holds a lot of that appeal.
Yeah. I mean, if you need things to do with your hands, that's fine. Mm-hmm. That doesn't bother me. Like I said, I would never, there's lots of people who will tell you and go into graphic detail about exactly why you're wrong for wanting to listen to CDs. I would never do that.
Right.
I'm glad you want to listen to records. It's great. It's music. That's the important thing. To me, the vehicle that it's on makes little difference to me. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. What's important is the music and the fact that you're hearing it.
Right.
That's important.
Yeah.
That the rest of it, I just don't. It's not a flag. Anywhere I want to plant my flag. I'm just not going to do. I won't make CDs. I won't do this. I'll make anything.
Yeah. How do you want it?
I don't care. Do you want to listen to my music or not? I don't have a political statement to make by how people listen to music. Well, it's not real. It's just numbers, zeros and numbers. Yeah. And you're probably listening to it through a computer. Even though you have a giant vinyl collection, you probably listen to the download card far more than you listen to vinyl. Fine with me.
Of course, because you have it in your pocket all the time, right?
That's it. I have iPod type situations. I love it. I can take practically my entire record collection with me, most of which is stuff I burned off of my CDs onto the computer. And now you can burn it at a pretty high rate and it sound okay. But I store my music on CD. That's if I want a record. Like this morning, I'm listening to On the Corner by Miles Davis. Mm-hmm. Cranked. That sounds awesome. CD, it sounds awesome. And people think, I was listening to something the other day through a friend of mine's really great system, one of our records, and I'm just like, the vinyl just doesn't sound as good. It's almost like there's too much information for it to sound good.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize this, but you do have to have things mastered differently for vinyl because I can't, I had to cut so much low end out of my record because I'm a baritone fiend and I'm using sub bass and doing all this ridiculous stuff. But it had to get totally redone to get pressed to vinyl. And I think a lot of people actually don't know that. They think that it's all the same process.
Well, I've talked to people about that too, because you go to a mastering session, they'll show you on the oscilloscope right there. There's the high end that has to go. There's the low end that has to go for your vinyl. All that goes right on your CD. And people, the vinyl fetish people will go, well, you're never going to hear that anyway. And I was like, I disagree.
You disagree. Will. You definitely will.
What you think you're hearing is warmth is usually compression and distortion. Mm-hmm. Usually. But like I said, I don't really want to make that big of a deal out of it because I appreciate people listening to vinyl. If that's what they want to listen to, it's fine with me. It really doesn't bother me. I'll make it if people want it, but that's the only reason.
Right.
You know?
Well, I can tell you're not a purist because you play in the solid state amp, which I'm a fan of that particular amp as well. It's actually right behind me. You probably
I can't see it.
It's probably behind my giant blue shirt, but
what is it?
It's a Sunn Beta Lead. Oh no, you can't see it. It's under the red amp. Sorry. That's
combo amp
for the listener.
Combo?
Yeah, it's the combo, the 212.
Yeah, those are all right. Yeah, they have the speakers that are inverted.
Yeah, they're really weird. Hard to mic.
Facing each other.
Yeah.
I think they did that to save space, I believe.
Is that why? I was trying to figure it out. I was like, this
because then it can fit into a situation where it's the same size as the head.
Oh, okay.
I'm speculating, but I've used those amps for a long time. You can chain those amps together really easily off the back.
Yes.
And then the first amp becomes the rest, slaves the rest of it.
Okay.
You know? So you can run that into another one and run, because what I used to do is slave two heads together and then run a double 15 cabinet with one and a 412 cabinet with the other. That's raging sounding.
Oh man.
The combo or the master volume for the top one runs the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's raging. But what I realized later was when I started using stereo power amps, is that I liked being able to control the sound of each or the volume of each cabinet. So there was nights where I get on stage and I go, tonight, the stage is more high-endy because every stage is different. And then I can back off the 12s and have more of the 15s.
Mm-hmm.
Give myself, balance it out a little better. Sounds a little better.
It's amazing.
You can't do that. You can't do that if you have one volume for the whole thing. Yeah.
No. It's crazy what a room does. And it also, like when you pile bodies in it, then it changes again.
Yeah, it changes. It definitely changes, but every stage is different. Another thing I realized, especially with cabinets, I don't want feet on my cabinets. I don't want casters. That just guts it. What you want is the cabinet with no feet, no rubber, the cabinet sitting directly on the ground, on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best you're going to get your cabinet to sound by far. If you have it up in the air, sitting on casters, you're losing the resonance of the stage it's on. That becomes really difficult when you're playing on like a solid concrete stage. It's really not much you can do.
Right.
It's just no resonance whatsoever. And it happens. Then you start thinking, my amp sounds like crap. It's like, nah, it's just a stage.
Mm-hmm.
So you do your best. That's why I love sound checking. I never, ever understand bands who don't sound check. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
You're
charging these people money to come and see you play, and you can't be bothered to come down there and check it out before you actually have to do your job. I don't get it.
I've never experienced that before.
Oh, I've seen countless bands, especially if we're opening for another band, countless times not sound check. Oh, they're not sound checking tonight. I'm just like,
what?
How can you be that stupid? It's like, what are you here for?
Yeah. And
why are we here?
What are you doing instead of that? Like eating chips? I don't know. Like,
I don't know. Not there. Sitting at the hotel, staring out into the middle distance. You know, I want to know to the best of my ability what I'm in for that night. And then I take away from the sound check what it sounded like. Because usually the first song in any sound check sounds like crap. Yeah. He was like, I'm in for it. I'm just in for a terrible night. I know what's going to happen. By the time you do three, 4 songs, you can kind of figure it out. But I have a really simple setup on stage. I use monitors, and it doesn't matter how big the stage is. I don't run anything through my monitors except vocals.
Okay.
That's it, because I can hear the bass and I can certainly hear the drums. I have any trouble hearing both of those things. And I also don't want to rely on something like monitors for me being able to play music, because you're just setting up another roadblock in your way about whether it's going to be good or not. So I don't like side fills. Once in a while, I'll run a little bit through the side fills, but then we don't usually travel with a monitor guy, and I have to tell him, just like this, I don't want anything in my monitors except for vocals. Okay, so you want hat and snare, and you want some bass drum in there. Start over. I don't want anything in my, it's like they can't believe it because they're so used to, I need to have the hi-hat a little louder, blah, blah. It's like, whatever. I mean, what happens if the monitors go out? Are you quitting? You walking off stage? Not me. I want to be able to play whether the monitors are working or not. Not just come from thousands and thousands of shows,
Do you prefer like regular stage monitors or you use in-ears?
I've never used in-ears. I can't imagine how that would, to me, it'd be like playing with the headphones on, which in the studio, I try to avoid headphones as much as possible.
Okay.
I want to be able to play on stage and find all the sweet spots for my amp. Usually try to locate those during sound check where it sounds the best. Mm-hmm. When I'm playing certain things where the amp reacts the way I want it to for feedback. And then I remember where those spots are when I go back out there and do the show. And so I'm not going to hear that if it's all blasting through my ears at the same volume. I want to be able to get out of the way of the amp and hear the room and hear what the drummer is doing and hear what the bass player is doing without me being in the way, it just be blasting guitar. I want to hear the ambience of the room. To me, it's more of a physical experience than almost anything else. In-ears, I've never tried them, but I just can't imagine. I think it would step all over everything I'm doing.
Yeah, you've got way more experience than I ever have, but my experience with in-ears was that, but you'd have to completely change, how you're used to doing it. So I'm not suggesting that you should do that because it's clearly working. But for me, the in-ears provided like this level of detail that I was like, oh, because I would not probably run just my vocals because of that same problem. I need to hear everything. And the in-ears provided a level of detail that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that I was doing that. Like, oh, I made a mistake here that I wouldn't have otherwise heard. It might have been covered up by the bass and stuff. But it's kind of a different thing. But like, obviously, if it ain't broke, don't fix it,
I mean, maybe it would be better. I mean, I don't know. But I like to be able to get out of the way of my amp. I also don't like stacks. I like to have my amps below my head. Yeah. My speaker cabinets below my head, especially for vocals. Try you running 4 4x12s stacked right behind you while you're trying to do vocal. It's like all you're going to hear is guitar.
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm going to compensate for that by having drums and everything else pounding through the monitors. Well, why don't you just set up different? And as far as the mistakes go, I'm going to make mistakes no matter what. Mm-hmm. I mean, I make mistakes even and usually it's the absolute simplest part of the song.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It's like, okay, just come in right now. Right,
no, missed it.
Right. Oh, I missed it.
You watch everybody else makes mistakes. That's okay. I mean, the guys I play with are super good players.
That's true.
And I can rely on them. And I can also rely on them if they make a mistake. They're not going to get lost. They're going to figure it out. Oh yeah, get back on it. Mm-hmm. But we're way past the idea of beating ourselves up for that kind of stuff. I mean, these kinds of things happen.
Right.
Okay. This is how it goes.
Yep. That makes sense.
Are the juice of playing live.
Steven's actually been on the show before.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that we had a lot of fun talking about all kinds of stuff. It was so long ago that I sort of forgot about it, and then when you were coming back on, I was like, wait a minute, Steven's been on this before.
Yeah. So probably the best bass player I've ever played with.
He's incredible. I'm watching him, in preparation for that. I remember going back and was just like, geez, this guy's good.
He's amazing. I'm playing with the best rhythm section on earth, I think.
Well, that's really important for what you do too. That's it's all that drives the whole train, Yep. I can rely on them. It's amazing.
It's sort of like Pete Townsend writing songs for Keith Moon and John Entwistle.
There you go. That's a good comparison.
It's like, you can't go wrong. It's a songwriter's dream. There's nothing I can throw at them they can't do.
So speaking of songwriting, have you changed your method or your process for creating songs from back in the day, or you still pretty much go at it with the same attitude?
I don't flog stuff to death the way I used to.
Okay.
like a record like Ozma to me, as much as I like those songs, it sounds flogged to death. Like we overcooked it. And it's just like, it's kind of lost some of its flavor. I think we would do a lot better job on it now if we re-recorded it. But Bullhead sounds that way to me too. Overcooked. But usually with bands like us, or bands at that point in their careers, they don't really have anything else to do except rehearse. Right.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
That's it. So your first records is usually massively over-rehearsed. And first record was okay. I think it sounds a little better than the other ones. Part of that has to do with who engineered it.
Okay.
Which was the first record was recorded by this guy, Carl Herlofson, who used to be in Hanoi Rocks, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
He was on an early version of Hanoi Rock. He did our first album, and he really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that I went back to after the next couple of records. But he was unbelievable. And he taught me a lot about like doubling guitars and why that kind of stuff was good. I mean, I don't like hair metal personally, but usually those guys are pretty good players. And I don't really like the way the records sound, but they certainly know how to make records.
Right.
And he had great ideas and was a really good, great guy to have as our first experience for an album. You know,
when you talk about doubling guitars, are you talking about literally playing them twice or running a DI and reamping them again?
No, literally playing it twice.
Okay.
Try that again. Now put another guitar on that.
Yeah.
Do that like that. Play this part of it again. You know, double it. It never had occurred to me. I mean, that was 1986. I think we were recording that record. And I just couldn't believe how great it sounded. That's the sound that I've been hearing on records from my, especially records I really dug.
Oh yeah.
Like Trace Hombres or something like that, but ZZ Top, the guitars are unbelievable on that. I wanted something that was a hybrid of punk rock and heavy metal mixed with like the Swans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hadn't heard anybody do that. That's what we were kind of looking for. And so when we got Dale in the band, I was looking specifically for a drummer that could play Iron Maiden stuff.
Okay.
Put him into a punk rock situation. And Dale knew that stuff inside out. That's what I wanted. And I go, and then because I knew if he could do that, he could do anything. He could easily play hardcore music or punk rock music without any trouble at all. However, if you take a hardcore drummer or a punk rock drummer, they certainly usually cannot play Iron Maiden, so you're stuck.
Right.
So if I say to him, I'm doing this song, I have the idea that I want to use a drum beat that's kind of a combination of the guy from the Bad Brains mixed with John Bonham mixed with the guy from King or Gang of Four. He'd be okay. Got it.
Know what that
I
meant.
understand what you mean. Or like Iron Maiden beat mixed with the guy from the Bad Brains. Oh yeah, okay. With that kind of feel on the tom-toms. Oh yeah, he'll get it. He can do that. Or this is pretty much a straight Iron Maiden type of thing. Okay, I got it. And nobody's going to put that connection together because the music sounds so much different than that.
Yeah, I certainly didn't. But now that you say it, it completely makes sense.
Clive Burrs was a great drummer. I saw them then, and he was great. And that's what I wanted. Put him into an arty punk rock situation with the ability to play full on heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, that's as rare as a dodo bird. And
especially back then, it became much more common. I mean, she's like years later, like in the 2000s.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that became more, but that's like where the quote unquote metalcore thing came into play. But
usually those guys aren't good with the art rock stuff.
Right. No, you're right. They kind of have a bit, they're a bit formulaic, or they can be. Not all of them, of course.
Not all of them. There's a few, but there's very few people out there that could do what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Without me having to explain it to him for 2 or 3 hours. Because I don't read music or write music. So when I write most of the material, I have to describe it to him in terms that I understand that he can figure out. Like, this has a hiccup in the middle of it. Oh, okay. He'll figure out what that is. And so it's a feel. It's sort of like if you listen to the live version of Voodoo Child by, what's his name? Stevie Ray Vaughan, and the live version of Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of them has a hell of a lot more soul. It's the exact same song, exact same notes probably, but one of them has a lot more soul.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. Yes, you're playing it correctly, but it's just not as good.
Oh man, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And
so many technically,
that's not something you can teach someone.
Right. There's so many technically amazing musicians that I'm like, technically you're very good, but I don't necessarily want to listen to that. No,
it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. It has nothing to do with making music.
It's more like it almost becomes more like athletics in a weird way at that point, where it's just like you're just trying to increase the skill, but not necessarily the emotion or the feel behind it. It's kind of weird.
It's very strange along those lines. I also never had any interest in practicing that sort of thing because I never wanted to do it.
Right.
Why would you practice things you would never want to do? I don't want to play like Eddie Van Halen. As much as I appreciate him, that's never been my thing. I never struggled for that. So right. I preferred a much weirder cross-section of stuff and didn't really want to play guitar solos and things like that exactly like someone else, and just had zero interest. If I could play, imitate someone wholeheartedly and be just like them, it would probably be a combination of Billy Gibbons and Joe Walsh, guitar wise.
That's interesting. I don't think a lot of people would draw that conclusion.
But I don't want to sound like that. But if I had to pick what I wanted to sound like, it would be that. Those guys are great. Nobody's going to play better than those guys. And they could write songs to boot. I mean, the James Gang are awesome. ZZ Top are awesome, especially the early stuff. People that don't like that stuff, I just don't know what to tell them. Sorry, I just don't. You're not speaking my language.
We're not on the same. We're just not.
You want to talk just about pure guitar playing. It doesn't matter if you can play as fast as you want to, but those guys are always going to be better than you because they play better than you.
That gets back to the whole the sound is in the fingers sometimes.
It's an Indian, not the arrow.
Right.
And so you can get these guys with massive guitar gymnastics. It's okay, but ultimately, who's better? Those two guys are better.
Right.
They're just better guitar players. Sorry, but they're better.
They have the thing, whatever that thing is, they have it.
They have the ability to take long, drawn out bends and noises that have little to do with guitar gymnastics that make what they're doing much more emotional and much more exciting to me than fast as you can go. It's like, that's okay, but I'm just not impressed. And if the song's not good, I don't care. I just don't care.
Well, and see, that's the great thing about Eddie, Van Halen, that was never my number one favorite things ever, but out of the shredders, he to me had the most feel.
Oh my God, he was great. And if you had seen, I saw Van Halen in the early 80s, like Women and Children First. You saw that tour? If you saw that tour, they were, and the next one, what's the name of the record? I can't think of it. The next record, the fourth record. If you saw either one of those tours, they were unbelievable. They're one of the best rock bands I ever saw. Nobody's better than them.
I can't imagine that's got to be just next level. I don't think
nobody. They're not. There's nobody close.
No.
As ridiculous as they look, they had really kick song like Romeo Delight. That song's awesome. Who doesn't like that?
No kidding, man.
I mean, if you don't like that stuff, I don't know what to tell you. It's rebellious. It's well executed. They have a big in the middle of the song that they leave in there because the feel is so good. They were just good. And live, there was just nobody better.
And just insane showmanship, insane playing, that the whole everything.
Everything. And it was raw and evil sounding and no redeeming social value whatsoever. Everything I wanted. Rock and roll is rebel music. It's rebel music. That's what it is. And punk rock is even more rebel music. That's what's good about it. And, I heard this thing that the singer from the Cramped Lux Interior said. He goes, the thing about metal is that it's that I like is that it's rebel music. Right. It's rebel music. That's what's good about it. Just like Jerry Lee Lewis, or it's just carrying on in that same tradition. Or Little Richard, or it's not really any different than that. What do I want to see? So, very few times does anything top that on a purely aggressive level.
Right.
Not much.
Just
And punk rock spoke to me in that same way, in a lot of it. Even though I didn't like all of that, I also don't like all heavy metal, but I like the rebellious nature of it.
Totally. Well, before I get in trouble, I was pulling up this, I told the Facebook group that you were coming on here, and I'm gonna pick some questions from them. Let's see if we got anything not ridiculous. Let's see.
I'm willing to answer any ridiculous question.
Okay, let's see. David Poe says, thoughts on going from readily available Boss pedals to make things what? Oh, basically I'll sum it up. He says going from readily available stuff to more boutique stuff. The theory being like Boss stuff's easy to replace on the road. The boutique stuff might be a little more difficult. Do you have any opinions or thoughts on that?
Well, the boutique stuff I've went to is my own stuff. So I have plenty of those.
Right. You got backups. You're good.
I got backups. I'm good. So that doesn't bother me. But if it comes down to it, I could easily go back to the Boss stuff without any trouble.
Nice.
Yeah.
John Chick Jr. He has a pretty good question. He says, if you could have a theme song play every time you walked into a room, what would it be?
My boyfriend's back and you're going to be in trouble.
Yes, that's fantastic. Some of these questions you already hit on, actually, so we don't need to.
I'll re-answer them.
You'll say it twice. One of this is like the Hilbish heads versus the Sunn Betas, which you already talked about.
Those are good. Also, the Hilbish stuff. I also did a compressor with him. That's great.
I have that too.
Compressimizer, and then we just did a new one called the Deathimizer.
Ooh,
which is really great. It's like an octave divider.
Oh,
really
I'm gonna get one of those. That sounds like fun.
It's really good, and I will hopefully come out with a new one. I'm not going to say what it is, but I think he's a genius, and I love his stuff, and I love the box designs are great. There's a few things that I wanted, and I'm like, I wanted to plug them in from the top, not from the sides, which I hate. Plugging in at the sides, it just takes up more room on your pedal board.
It's true. It's true.
I wanted big pedals, not little tiny. I want things that were made out of metal, not plastic, not junk. I want it made out of metal, or if I used it as a hammer, I could cave somebody's head in with it.
You definitely could.
Yeah.
And the pedal would probably be okay afterwards.
Pedal be okay. I want it designed like to be able to go out on tour with me and not get destroyed into powder.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were going for. And the now you can line them up in a row on the pedal board. They're exact same size. They fit perfectly, and you plug them in from the top. So you just boom, 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 boom. They look great. My wife does the design for the image design for them. It's really cool, and I'm very much into it. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I like the soft touch switch too. By the way,
love it. That was Hilbish's idea, and I was like, that's a great idea.
He did a good job. Sometimes those can be implemented, and they're a little. They put a little bit too much delay in them to avoid the popping, and he got it. He got it just right. Right.
He knows what he's doing. He's a great guy.
I've been messaging with him. We're gonna get him on the show one of these days. So
you should. Yeah.
Let's see. So Heath Williamson says, do you ever record with wooden guitars in the studio?
I use all kinds of guitars in the studio. Okay. We just did a new recording where I meticulously kept notes of everything I used, every single kind of guitar.
Oh, that'll be great for the gear nerds.
I used Firebird, two SGs, a Hamer. What else? Travis Bean, an electrical, Stratocaster. I think that's it.
Nice.
Some songs I used all those guitars. No Les Pauls on any song.
No Les Pauls on this one. Okay.
No. Well, there's been records. I did a whole album, the Nude with Boots record, because people were saying all kinds of crap. I did the Nude with Boots record. Not only did I do it with a Les Paul, I did it with the first Les Paul I ever had, which is the one I used on Glue Porch Treatments. And I used it for every single part of every song. You think anybody noticed?
Right.
Nobody said a word. That's all Les Paul, one Les Paul. Do you think it sounds better or worse? And I'm not a vintage guy. I like new guitars.
Yeah.
Brand new. Yeah, if I can get them brand new. So all the guitars I have now are ones I bought brand new.
Okay.
Not before, I bought them brand new. They're not brand new now, but I bought them brand new.
Yeah, that reminds me, your signature EGC is the first aluminum guitar I ever played.
Oh, wow. Yeah. What'd you think?
Well, there was one here, and I was like, this was really interesting. And I played it here in a shop in Portland. And I absolutely am like, oh, geez, why did I do that? Because I'm going to have to get one now.
Yeah,
Like,
they're great.
It
I
was
love those
such a
guitars.
different experience than anything I'd had before. You know, I was
Yes.
really, really shocked. Like,
Yeah.
I was blown away, honestly.
Yeah. I load mine with Les Paul pickups.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Les Paul custom pickups in the rear position. And then the front position is the problem I always had with Les Pauls and their pickups was the Les Paul front position pickup, which is the rhythm pickup, is always too hot.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because I use the switch all the time. I use the middle position and for a blend of the two, and it was always too hot.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted was I have to turn it down too much to get it to not feedback, and so I have a low output pickup in there.
Gotcha.
And it solved the problem. And it was really funny when I told Kevin that, he's like, "That's such a great idea." And then when he did it, and we put in a new guitar, he goes, "Oh my God, so many people are going to love this." You know what? Nobody loves it because the guitar players are too conservative.
Oh
no! I just want it normal.
I was like, I wasn't sure what to think. Like, I was like, this is unlike. It almost sounds. I've said this about a few different guitars over the years, but this one especially, it almost sounds like it has a piano quality to it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, and the thing is, people think that there's too much high end. I was like, I've beat them. It has more low end than my Les Paul by far.
High end,
huh?
It's too much high end. I don't know.
You can't please anyone, you know.
Let's see what else we got in the group here. There's so many big, long questions that it's like hard to read on the fly.
That's fine. I'll answer with a big, long answer.
Let's see. Here we go. Joshua Dupree. I'll chime in. Mr. Buzzo, I hear your influences of Black Flag and other punk bands in your music, but you've managed to put flavor on it that is like no other of that time. Now that you guys are such a big influence on so many bands, are there any that have taken the Melvins influence and put their own original spin on it that have stood out to you?
Well, yeah, some big ones like Nirvana and Soundgarden.
Yeah. Those bands.
There's two that literally change music on a global level.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be the biggest.
Yeah. I mean, the Nirvana influence is like well established.
Right. So
I think he was probably looking
to know
for anybody.
Anyone's ever done that? Yes, they have.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't get any bigger than that. I've always been happy that our music was able to impact things on a global level.
Do you ever feel like you're like the music nerds Nirvana?
I think it's cool, but we're far weirder than those bands, so it's no mistake that we sold a lot less records, and so there's a lot less people who know who we are. I'm fully aware of that. I'm okay with it. I get it. I'm not jealous. People have this idea that I'm jealous or something like that. I couldn't be less jealous. I'm very happy with who I am. I'm jealous. People are not happy with where they are or who they are. I'm not that guy. I've never been that guy. If I was that guy, I would have quit a long time ago. I understand my place in the world. It's fine with me. Mm-hmm. I can't believe that it's had that much of an impact. I was right.
You were right.
My instincts were right. They were right at a time when very little people had any interest, and we kept doing it anyway because I was sure we were onto something. And those two bands prove it.
Mm-hmm.
You were onto something. You were correct. Your musical instincts were 100% correct in what needed to happen. Now, if the rest of the world doesn't understand that, there's nothing I can do about it. The rest of the world rarely understands anything I do. It's okay. I'm okay with that. I get to work with people like Kevin Burkett. I get to make records. I get to work with Hilbish. I get to do all these things. I get to play guitar and have fun in a band and play with excellent musicians. Life doesn't get any better than that. I've been married for 28 years to the same woman. I mean, I'm a happy guy. And to have this whole idea that I'm pissed off, I'm not pissed off about anything. You know,
I think that's really important to like, they say that like comparison is the thief of joy. And it seems like you've come to that conclusion without having to be told. Oh,
I don't care. I mean, I have always appreciated those kinds of things. And I was always very appreciative that they mentioned that. They talked about it. Now they're fans. They're not, they don't like what we do because they have very little understanding in what those people do.
Well, I mean,
very little. They don't really understand where their music is coming from. They don't understand those guys at all. If they hate us, which is the very essence of what those bands are doing, then they'd understand nothing about those bands. Certainly not where they come from. They're big fans of ours. And it's not because they're stupid. They're just far more sophisticated than the vast millions of people who bought their records. That's just the way it is.
How many people do you think took the path that I did, where I found you through Nirvana?
Oh, lots. And that's fine with me.
Yeah.
That kind of thing doesn't bother me. I'm just glad you got there at all.
Yeah. I mean, so am I.
I was happy about that. We've continued to make records. It's not like we never slowed down. Those bands have fell by the wayside and came back and a lot of other things like that, but we never stopped. We make records all the time and have managed to do a massive, massive amount of music. We have a new thing coming out now soon. It's a 4-album all acoustic record.
Yes.
Yes. Where we reimagine a new song just came out today, Pitfalls and Serving Warrants, another single, which came out really good. So I got to do that with Dale and Steven. They play acoustic bass, acoustic guitar, and Dale plays brushes on the record. But if you hear it, I think people are going to be severely surprised about how great that stuff sounds, even though it's acoustic.
I was like really, really surprised. I was like, what is this going to be? And I can't believe how it translated.
It works.
It does. That just tells you the bones are good.
That's it. A good song is a good song. It takes somebody like Hendrix or ZZ Top or those guys. It wouldn't matter how they recorded. It would be good because the songs are good. Mm-hmm. And these guys that I play with are able to translate it, get that feel no matter what we're using. We can literally go into a studio with any kind of equipment and make a record. It wouldn't matter. We're just going to use whatever's at the studio. It'd still work.
Right.
Because they're good. And because I can handle that. Those are just tools. Guitars are just tools. Amps are just tools. You can make it work. When I go and fly somewhere and play a gig, I'll just go, give me, X Marshall amp with 2 4x12s. It's going to sound generic and not as good as what I normally do, but I can certainly make it work. Mm-hmm. I can make anything work.
Do you get a lot of inspiration out of new gear? Or is
new gear?
Yeah, like his gear really inspires me to make stuff, but I know some people don't get that excited about it. How do you feel about it?
No, I love gear. I mean, we use a lot of different stuff in the studio. We recorded Toshi Kasai in a studio in LA, and we have lots of guitars. So a lot of times when I do a double now, at the time I didn't have, I'll double the same part, but I'll use a different guitar. Mm-hmm. With the exact same amp settings and everything. Yeah. And that gives it enough to where it's different enough. I go out of my way to do things of that nature, but I love guitars. I think guitars are one of the most amazing, beautiful things on earth.
Is there any that are just like on the bucket list, for lack of a better term? Like, man, I really want to get one. And
I have pretty much everything I ever wanted. The only one I want is I think it's called a Rickenbacker 481.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
With the slanted pickups.
Yes. Those are cool.
That's the one I want. But I don't want to pay $2,000 for it. So I'm not that interested in it. That's really about it. I mean, I probably would take a couple of old Ventures model Mosrites.
Oh yeah, those are sick too.
That would be cool. But I would even take a remake of one of those, but I don't know if they're making those. Maybe they are. I don't pay attention that much to gear. I like Gibsons, some Fenders. I have a Mustang. It's really nice, about 35 years old. Something like that. I bought that new. I have a Jaguar I really like. That's new. That's probably 7 or 8 years old. It's really great. And I wanted that one because it had a painted headstock, which matches the body, which usually doesn't happen. I thought that was really cool. And those guitars are really severely underrated, I think. They're really cool guitars.
Very, very.
Don't like the Jazzmasters as much. I think the Jaguar is a better guitar, personally. But they're weird to play. I have one I really like. I still like Les Pauls. I have 3, 2 black ones and my original red one. Mm-hmm. With the red one's a 1970. I bought that in the early 80s for $400. And I thought I was so much money, I couldn't even imagine how I could spend that much money on a guitar. I still have it. But I'm not precious about, like, I'm not going to ever go out and buy 1965, or some early 60s Strat. That just couldn't care less about that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I couldn't care less. It's like, it's fine. I get just as much enjoyment out of new guitars as I ever would out of buying an old one. You know, the Firebird I have is probably 5 years old, 6 years old. That thing's great. Brand new. Gibson.
You get a good one. You get a good one. They made a lot of bad old guitars, you know?
Hendrix always played new guitars.
That's right. He sounded great with his brand new guitars. He had to. He could light them on fire.
So did the Velvet Underground. So did Led Zeppelin.
That's true. Those were brand new guitars at the time.
Brand new guitars. Velvet Underground played all that stuff with brand new guitars. So yeah, we want to be a combination of the Velvet Underground and Iron Maiden. That's a good combo.
Yeah.
Or and mixed in with Captain Beefheart. Or as we always say, we're Captain Beefheart playing heavy metal.
I haven't heard that. That's hilarious.
That's it. When you think about it, that's what we're doing.
That's true. That is
Captain Beefheart played heavy metal, it'd be the Melvins.
You're really like you're connecting a lot of dots for me now. So
that's our big inspiration. We did a record a few years ago called Everybody Loves Sausages, which is all covers of bands that were big influences on us that maybe people hadn't thought of. Like the Fugs and David Bowie and just, Roxy Music and all kinds of stuff. That record, check out. And people didn't really get that. They go, dude, a covers record. It's like, well, it's a covers record of bands that are influences that maybe you didn't think of.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no Sabbath cover on there or anything. As much as we like that stuff, it was too obvious. It was like, let's think about bands that maybe people hadn't heard of.
That makes a lot of sense.
That wouldn't or hadn't decided, oh yeah, the Melvins, that's what they sound like. And we thought maybe that would clear things up to people, but there's people kind of missed the point. So, oh well,
check that out.
I love it. So it's Venom and bands like that are on it.
Dude, that sounds awesome.
Venom with I doubt there's another band who's done a covers record that includes Venom and Roxy Music.
Probably not.
And the Fugs.
Yeah. Well, man, hey, I know we've hit that point where you got to.
All right, man.
But this was so fun.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
This is great.
All right.
For Buzz, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. Well, there you have it. King Buzzo, Buzz Osborne. We did it. We did the thing. It happened. That was real. That was a real episode. My mind is still kind of melting from that. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you're not familiar with the Melvins, which is hard to imagine if you are someone who listens to this podcast, but if you're not, dig into that back catalog. Get going. Do some research. Find that riff-filled library. Get involved. I mean, seriously. What is going on? If you don't know the Melvins, please get to know the Melvins. They are definitely one of the most influential bands out there. I think Buzz was selling him short when he talked about just those two little bands, those few little bands they may have had some impact on. You know what I mean? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you really like this podcast and you want to support it and keep it on the airwaves or internet waves, whatever waves these are, I'm not really sure. Bit waves? I'm not sure. What am I talking about? It's late and I'm tired. But if you would like to support this show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts. You can see that little subscription button, or you can go to patreon.com/tonemob. And both of those for about $5 a month will get you extra content delivered to your ears every week. Unfortunately, Buzz wasn't able to hang out for any longer on this particular episode, which I totally understand. He had a bunch of interviews to do. But I do have a sneak peek of an upcoming episode that won't be released for quite a while, coming at you this week for all of those supporting subscribers, plus all of the who knows how many hours of back catalog bonus episodes are over there. There's a ton of content. There's a ton of stuff. And I super appreciate everyone who supports over there. Thank you so much. And as always, if you can't, hey, I get it. I totally understand. But if you could please tell someone about this podcast, tell somebody about it. I know I ask for this every week. I know it sounds like I'm begging because I am begging. Please tell people. That's all we have with podcasts. We don't have algorithms to drive these things forward. We don't have, magic memes that can teleport these things, into your friend's feed. All we have is you supporting the show and telling your friends. And that's what it's all about. So thank you so much for everyone that's supported for all these years. I promise to deliver the best stuff I can. And I I'm going to keep doing it. So with that, I think I'll sign off and try to get some shut-eye before I answer a bunch of these emails. Or after I answer. Yeah, after I answer a bunch of emails. It'd be weird if I went to sleep. And anyway, I'll talk to you on the internet very soon. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.